Chris Haynes still with us this morning on Undisputed. Chris, who wins this series and in how many?
This is a tough one. I'm not trying to cop out. I need to see the first game. I need to see the first game because there's no home court advantage, and that kind of defeats the purpose of a 1-8 or just having that advantage after all. But look, I will say this. I think this series is going the distance. And I'll be able to get a better feel of the series after game one. But look, I'm going to tell you this. I've said this time and time and again, even leading up to the restart. I said if the Blazers were able to get into the restart and have a legitimate path of getting to the playoffs, I said I felt really good about their chances. And I went beyond that and said that they had the potential to go the distance in this playoffs. They've done that. Dame Lillard stepped it up. Look, during the hiatus, Dame was sending me like video of him working out, just showing that he was still in a groove. Like he was like seriously, really seriously about getting back into the season and wanting to prove that the Blazers were worthy of not just making a run, but making a deep run. And so he's been salivating over this moment, and it's finally here. And the Lakers aren't playing well. I talked to LeBron James yesterday. I asked him, are you concerned about how guys are going into the playoffs? He said, no, they feel like they can, smooth things out. But he did say this, that the Blazers are not your typical 8th seed. So I got to see how game one plays out before deciding, what this is going to be. But I think this is going to distance, game 7.
I got the Lakers in 6. Dame Lillard's going to be special. He's going to average somewhere between 35 and 40 points a night, and I believe he'll win them 2 games. But I just believe the two-headed monster of the Lakers will be too much. The Portland game, their offense is their defense. They average giving up 123 points a game. And if they give up 123 points a game to some also-rans, Memphis, I believe the Lakers should be able to get that in their sleep. The question is, are the Lakers still going to be shooting 10% from the three-point line? Because they've been abysmal from the three-point line. And it gets frustrating because they double-team AD. AD passes out of the double-team, and guys are missing wide-open threes. Kuz has been inserted, I believe, into the starting lineup. So we're going to see. But I believe the Lakers win this series in 6 games. Dame Lillard is going to be special. You're going to have to get the ball out of his hands in crunch situation and make CJ, make Gary Trent Jr., make Melo. Because I already know what Dame can do. I don't need to see anything else from Dame. Dame don't need to show me anything else. He convinced me. Well, he convinced me years ago. But he's really won me over the last year and a half. And what I've seen from him over the last 3 games and what I've seen from him since this restart, yeah, Dame has made me a believer. So you got to make sure you take the ball out of his hand. If Melo, if CJ can make those shots, Gary Trent Jr. can consistently make those shots, you live with that. But I'm not letting Dame Lillard beat me. But I got the Lakers in 6.
So, Chris Haynes, nobody knows the Portland Trailblazers any better than you do. I don't see how Portland can win 1 game against the Lakers because Portland struggled down the stretch to win every game. They did win and win and win, but they barely overcame Brooklyn, obviously, and then they barely overcame Memphis. So knowing the team the way you know them, convince me, show me what specifically has to happen for this to, as you say, go to 7 games with the Blazers having a chance to knock off the Lakers in game 7.
Well, I'll say this, Skip. You're saying as if the Lakers are playing the way they played before the hiatus. I'm looking at the matchup. I'm looking at how they've been struggling, how they've had yet to find an identity, how they're still trying to work certain guys into the mold. And Rajon Rondo was back. I don't know if he'll be available for game 1, but at some point they got to work him back into the fold. So the Blazers are not coming into it and facing a team that has it all together. Matter of fact, you can argue that they're probably the worst performing team offensively wise in this restart. And so then if you look at Portland, they've been in playoff mode ever since they got here. They had to win virtually every single game. They went 6-2, and that snuck them into the play-in game. And so I'm looking at a team that is already playoff ready. Damian Lillard is the bubble MVP, right? And then you're looking at a team that you're thinking and you're hoping that they just click it on just like that. That's hard to do. So just for those elements alone, that's why I say Portland has a legitimate shot. And I said this before the Lakers came out here and struggled. I said this before the restart, that if Blazers got in that they would be a serious threat because the Blazers, for most part, are healthy. And I still think that holds true.
Okay, the reason I couldn't condemn the Lakers' performance in the bubble is they came in with a 5.5-game lead over the Clippers, and it was almost a foregone conclusion they were going to be the 1 seed. They showed me a lot against the Clippers in the opener of the restart. They showed me a whole lot in dismantling Utah because it was a joke what Anthony Davis did to Rudy Gobert. So I'm not ready to say, oh, they've lost it in the bubble. I don't think they've lost it at all. It's going to come down to me, too. There's no Avery Bradley, so you've lost a premier perimeter defender on either Dame or CJ. As I've said many times on this show, my biggest disappointment in Dame and CJ was last year in the conference finals against Golden State without Kevin Durant. They had 4 straight cracks at Golden State, close games going to the fourth quarter, and Dame and CJ, by their lofty standards, really struggled. In fact, both of them, by their standards, they stunk in those 4 fourth quarters and 1 overtime at the end of Game 4. That cannot happen against the Lakers. I could see them in the first 4 games of this series having chances going to the fourth quarter to close the deal. Well, one or the other, Dame or CJ, you better close it with no Avery Bradley, maybe no Rondo to even bother you a little bit on the perimeter. You should have your way. And if you are those guys, if you're capable of rising and shining in this spotlight, in that bubble against the number 1 seed, then you should do what Shannon said. You should at least win 2 games. Maybe you should do what Chris Haynes is suggesting and win 3 games and make it a Game 7 win or go home game, because you're both good enough to do that. You just haven't done it at the highest level in your career yet. This is your opportunity to do that.
To that, I will say this, Skip, is that you mentioned the players that are not here. You mentioned Avery Bradley and Rondo. Shouldn't that bode well for Dame and CJ?
Yeah, it should. It should be big advantage for both of them. Yep, I agree.
But, Skip, I would say this. The way teams are starting to trap Dame, and I'm not talking about trap him after he passes half court. They're trapping him before he reaches half court. And so that philosophy right there, that game plan right there is trying to make sure that other guys beat him. And so it's going to be, so the onus is going to be on the C.J. McCollum, Carmelo Anthony, Gary Trent Jr. to hit big shots because Dame trusts his players. But I will say this. Dame has learned because New Orleans Pelicans, a few years ago, they were the first team to implement this trapping of Dame. Yeah. And Dame has learned, as you've seen in that Brooklyn game, he was even attacking the doubles. Like, he saw the double coming, he was like, nah, I'm splitting this. No, I'm turning the corner.
You can do it.
He's going to and that's one of the reasons why, guys, he started shooting from the logo. Because he's seeing this pressure coming already. He was like, forget it. You're not taking me out of the game. I'm shooting from deep. I'm shooting back here with regularity. And so it's going to be a little bit harder to stop him with those traps. But that's one advantage the Lakers are going to have. They're going to be able to try to get the ball out of his hand.
Yeah, but it's hard to trap him in the middle of the court. You got to pin him in a corner. And their bigs are going to have to show. The bigs are you worried about just flashing and worried about Nurkic or Whiteside rolling to the rim. You're going to, Dwight Howard and whomever's in the pick and roll, you're going to have to come all the way out. You're going to end up having to guard Dame because you can't let him see daylight. He sees daylight, he's going to raise up and shoot the ball. And Skip, you mentioned last year the failure that he had. I believe that's the motivating factor because he knows in the back of his mind he has some opportunities. Because do you know what that would have meant if they could have taken down Golden State even without KD? Because even without KD, that's still a 73-9 team from the year before. And get to the NBA in the finals, that would have boded well for Dame's career. I don't believe he's forgotten that. I believe that's the motivating factor what we've seen thus far in the seeding games. And I don't think it's going to let up. I believe Dame, like I said, I believe he's going to average somewhere between 35 and 40. The question is, can he overcome LeBron and AD? They're going to need to average about 60, pretty close to 60 points between the two of them.
Let's flip it around.
Yes.
Who guards LeBron James? I believe in stretches, it needs to be Carmelo Anthony. And I'm going to throw this out because it amused me yesterday. LeBron did go out of his way to tell the I saved Melo from drowning story. Remember that one?
Yeah.
And it's real and it's great. And way to go, LeBron. I think he saved his life. But he wanted Melo to know, I saved your life. You gotta take it easy on me because you owe me. But I do think Melo needs to guard LeBron some because he's big enough and strong enough and savvy enough to do it. What do you think, Chris Haynes? Can he guard him?
Well, can he guard him? I mean, yes, he could get in front of him. Can he guard him? Yeah, I mean, look, Portland doesn't have many options. You know, Zach Collins is going to be out. He's somebody who on pick and rolls can step out and kind of guard some perimeter guys, but he's going to be out game one. It's Carmelo and it's Gary Trent Jr. And so when you look at Carmelo, LeBron obviously has a speed advantage. You look at Gary Trent, he obviously has a height advantage and a weight advantage. Mm-hmm. So there is not a good formula for success when you're talking about stopping LeBron. I think what the Blazers feel like, they need to try to contain AD. And they're hoping that the struggles he's had in the restart will translate over into the postseason. So Portland has a lot of bigs. And typically, when AD is playing against a lot of bigs, he likes to face up and he starts shooting a lot of jumpers. Mm-hmm. That's what you want from AD. You want him to settle for those jump shots because once he starts penetrating and getting to the paint, that's when he causes havoc. So it's not, believe me, there is no answer for LeBron James in this series. Just like Dame, he's going to have to allow other guys to kind of bring it.
Pick and roll. We're going to see a lot of that pick. We didn't see a whole lot of AD and LeBron in the pick and roll. Don't be surprised. You're going to get a heavy dose of that pick and roll tonight.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here to get the latest from the show, and be sure to check out more of the best clips from Undisputed, or go watch a few other segments from our other shows on FS1.